Hello and welcome to BibliConservaTutional, trusting in the Bible as the final authority when uniting the Constitution and conservatism. I want to tell you right up front, these videos are not designed to be totally inclusive, encompassing on the issues that are presented. What they're hopefully going to do is for us to ask ourselves, number one, on these issues, am I conservative? Number two, do I honor the Constitution? And number three, do I take the truth of the Bible as the final authority, and that represents my decision on these issues? Today, we're going to talk about BibliConservaTutional and socialism. And what I first want to talk about is what socialism is. Simply defined, socialism is a political and economic theory of social organization that advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Now, pretty much what socialism leads to is atrophy, government as an abusive caretaker, and less economic and social opportunities, not more like some would believe. Reasons for socialism that people want to have a socialism in place is, number one, social equality; two, economic equality; three, medical equality; and then finally, fourth, political equality. Unfortunately, this is not always what takes place. What usually takes place, well, what does take place in socialism is, number one, you get higher cost. Socialism is going to be a higher cost than other forms of government, it says, because thus taxes are high in socialistic countries. Socialistic countries tend to have a much higher debt ratio per citizen. Number two, there's less entrepreneurships. Higher taxes mean it's much harder for entrepreneurs to start new companies and or restrict existing companies from being very dynamic. Number three, there's less rags to riches because socialism reduces that desire for the poor to work harder to get a higher education and to innovate, since they're pretty much guaranteed a minimum quality of living. It also leads, number four, to big government. More taxes means a bigger government. And number five, let's see. Usually, what people think is of everything is going to be equal in socialist government, where inequalities are still going to be present. There might be a situation where inequalities are lessened, but again, the decision of what's fair and what's equal is pretty much deemed by the government, of which the people, majority-wise, will not agree to what the government agrees is to be fair. So now, I'd like to go ahead and define what a democracy is. It's a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. It's a form of government in which the sovereign power resides in and is exercised by the whole body of free citizens, directly or indirectly, through a system of representation. Now, it might be a surprise to you, but that's not defined as who the United States is, the government. We're not a democracy. The note on democracy is that in a pure democracy, 51% beats 49%. In other words, the minority has no rights. The minority only has those privileges granted by the dictatorship of the majority. So before, I don't want to lose you here, because even myself, for many years, related to the United States as a country as a democracy. In many ways, we are, which I'll get into that here also, but what we are is a republic. And a republic defined is a state in which supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives, in which has an elected or nominated president rather than a monarch. Again, it's a government in which the powers of sovereignty are vested in the people and are exercised by the people, either directly or through representatives by the people. Through representatives that are chosen by the people, to whom those powers are specifically and specially delegated. So, emphasis here is on that it's a government that the powers of sovereignty are vested in the people, not solely by the majority or the minority. It's represented by the people through their representatives also. And just see if you recognize this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Did you notice that? It says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. It doesn't say to the socialism for which it stands or to the democracy for which it stands. It says to the republic for which it stands. Now, our republic is sometimes referred to as a constitutional republic, which is a good thing. It's still defined in the lines of a republic, and the actual definition of a constitutional republic is a state in which the head of state and other officials are representatives of the people. They must govern to the existing constitution, which is a good thing. And in a constitutional republic, executive, legislative, and judicial powers can be separated into distinct branches, which in ours we do. We have the executive, the legislative, and judicial powers. Now to go to the actual Constitution. In the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, I'll read that. It says, "The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive, in parentheses, the legislative cannot be convened, against domestic violence." What is said here, the very first, it's guaranteed to every state in this union a republican form of government. Now the founders believed that the government is to be a republican, or let's start over there. They believed this government should be republican. So in order to happen, they believed political decisions had to be made by a majority, or in some cases a plurality, of the voting citizens. The citizenry might act either directly or through elected representatives. Either way, a republican government was a government accountable to the citizenry. Again, the republican government was a government accountable to the citizenry, not to elected officials, not to a president, not to a ruler or a government. Excuse me. Now, for me, it's pretty simple to take this Constitution and, in a very simple statement, when compared to socialism, we'll understand what the Constitution is. The Constitution, when it was first created, was written if it was written for a socialist country, then as it was written, as it was signed with final signature, at that point, we would have had a socialist government. We don't. We have a republic. So there's no way you can take the Constitution and somehow twist it to make it sound or be interpreted as a socialist country or government. And as far as conservatism versus socialism, let me give again just a quick definition of what a conservative is. It's holding to a traditional attitudes and values and cautious about change or innovation, typically in relation to politics or religion. So as far as a conservative person is concerned, it cannot be socialist, because a conservative person would hold to the political initial establishment of this country, which is the Constitution, which is not socialism, it's a republic. And there might even be, you could argue possibly, there might even be a situation where you can have a conservative person that is in partly socialist government, but the overall overwhelming organization, a part of that system, especially the government, is not going to be conservative government because they're making decisions for other people, for everyone else. They're not making their own decisions. People are not making their decisions. It's up to the government to deem what is fair, what is able to be be distributed equally. And now to take conservatism and conservatism and the Constitution, and to take the truth of the Bible and to use that as the final authority. Some people will say that the Bible itself, it promotes socialism. I cannot find in context, as you read the Bible in the Old or the New Testament, anywhere where socialism is even hinted as a way, a form that God would want his creation, his people, to be ruled under. Some will take, as an example, the book of Acts, chapter 2, the end of the book of Acts, chapter 2, where the apostles, the disciples, come together. Now, let me just read to you. Acts 2, verse 44 and 45, it says, "Now all who believed were together and had all things in common, and sold their possessions and goods, and divided them among all as anyone had need." Now again, people would say, look, they came together, sold everything, put it in one big pot, and divided it as anyone had need. That's socialism, Jim. Well, it's not. It's not socialism, because what happened is, you need to realize these people were followers of Jesus. They weren't the entire population. They made a decision that they want to take what they have and come together and divide up and meet the needs of the people. Totally, totally different from socialism in a government. They did not say that everybody took their possessions, handed it over to the government, and said, please take this. You know what's fair. You know how to distribute it. Give everyone equality and make everything perfectly equal. The government is not even, there's nowhere in the Bible that mentions the government is to take over and decide what's equal and what's fair. Just an example real quick, in Mark 12, verses 14 through 17. They come up to Jesus and they ask him, it says, "Teacher, we know that you are true and care about no one, for you do not regard the person of men, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" So Jesus comes to him and says, "Why do you test me? Bring me a denarius and I may see it." So they brought it to him, and he said to them, "Whose image and inscription is this?" They said to him, "Caesar's." Jesus answered and said to them, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." So what Jesus said is, pay your taxes, obey the rule of the land. He's not saying to rebel against paying taxes. And then render to God what is God's. Do not interpret it that he's saying, okay, again, just take it all, give it to the government, and let them decide how to distribute the goods, how to distribute the wealth. Total misinterpretation, if that's the way you look at it, the person looks at it that way. So biblically, standing upon the truth of the Bible, to take together the Constitution and conservatism, you cannot look and see and promote socialism within the United States of America. The final authority, as we always believe in BibliConservaTutional, is the Bible. We want to rest on that truth. So to wrap up today's program, I just want to remind you, concerning our eternal destiny, truth must be the foundation of our belief. So may God bless you and be encouraged to speak up. from the truth.